What's up, guys? Welcome back to Out of Our Minds. How's it going? This conversation was fucking jam-packed, and holy shit. Nikki and I basically got inspired a few days ago or a week ago, I can't remember, where we basically voice note about these realizations that we have, and then we're like, we should do a whole podcast on it. And so today, we end up diving into something called 7 Essene Mirrors of Relationships, it's called. And this is something that has been a philosophy, or I guess you can almost call it like a science, that has really been stewarded by this guy named Greg Braden. I think he's actually very big on Gaia as well. And what was really interesting is, I think a lot of you have probably heard of the concept that your relationships are mirrors. The people around you reflect back to your inner world. And I think we probably all understand that on a high level, and we've lived it, we've experienced it, maybe we read about it, listened to another podcast on it. And what's pretty sick about this conversation is we ended up digging really deep into not just what the classic idea of a relationship is between two people, right? Friends, lovers, romantics, families, but actually that your whole life is a relationship. Your whole existence is a relationship. And we're going to go into what that means. And as we go through each mirror, it kind of peels another layer of what does that mean for you and your spiritual path, your understanding of the world, your understanding of yourself. And I kind of just walked away feeling really like inspired, and actually with my gears kind of just turning even more to think about what that means and what these mirrors mean. So yeah, we bring in the Essene mirrors. We talk a little bit about Eastern philosophy. It's fucking lit. Nikki, anything to add that you enjoyed from it?
Yeah, this episode's going to empower you to be able to turn inwards to shift your own being in order to shift the way that people are showing up in your life, or the kinds of people that are showing up in your life. And it's just a really empowering way to see the things that you are experiencing in your reality and the way that you relate to them.
Amazing. Cool. Well, we will get into the episode. Last thing we'll say super quick is, if you are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, hit like, comment your experience, your thoughts. We want to know what you guys think. And be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen. We're also on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We're literally all over the internet. You cannot escape us, so you might as well join us. And become an Omi. That's our affectionate name for this community. So yeah, seriously guys, we're so grateful for you guys listening. It's been just incredible. It's only been like, I think 7 weeks on this day that we're recording since we launched, and it's just been insanely cool, and we're excited to keep going. So enjoy the episode, reach out to us, all the things. We love you, and let's do it.
What's up, guys? I'm Nikki.
I'm Bella, and this is the Out of Our Minds podcast, a playground for mystics and self-explorers to journey through the vast realms of the universe, cultural landscapes, and spiritual expansion.
Join us weekly as we dive into thought-provoking discussions that unveil the mysteries of existence and nurture the growth of our consciousness.
Hey guys, welcome back into the Out of Our Minds podcast. This is Nikki here, and we got Bella.
What's up?
Back from vacay.
Oh yeah, forgot about that for a sec.
Today's episode is going to be one that is information dense. Bella and I did our research coming to this episode.
Down the rabbit hole.
Just to give you guys down the rabbit hole we go on the topic of people being mirrors into our own inner world, right? That's like kind of the gist of what we're going to dive into today.
Yeah, it's really like what is happening on a very deep level with relationships, romantic, platonic, family. Like, what does it really, really mean, these things we're experiencing? Essentially, your life through the context of your relationships, which you can argue like your entire existence is about relationships. So,
right. And it can go as far to say that even your entire reality is a reflection of your inner world, right? Like, this is the basis of all manifestation work, is to know yourself and your beliefs and your energy so that you can begin to shift within and reflect that externally. So Bella and I got into this conversation around, okay, then what are the people in our life reflecting to us? What are they showing us about ourselves? What are the people that are triggering us showing about ourselves? What are the people that we love showing us about ourselves? And this is where we started to go down the rabbit hole of how people are a reflection of our inner worlds. And doing this research, we came to find that there are a lot of people out there who have developed theories around this exact subject. So we watched some Gaia documentaries. We did some research on something called the 7 Essene mirrors of relationships, right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
So we're going to dive right into it. So how about we start by maybe prior to our research, how we felt people were a reflection of our own inner worlds. What was the gist of what you felt about this prior to our research?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned this for sure in a couple past episodes when we've talked a little bit about relationships. I mean, in my own personal experience, like my romantic relationship has just been, it has just taught me so many spiritual and life lessons. And I think that was the first place that really confirmed for me this idea, this idea that the people in your life, and especially your romantic partner, is going to show you the deepest parts of you. And I didn't really know this for a while. And so I think I had a phase of my relationship where it was a bit unconscious and not realizing this truth of a relationship being like a mirror. And so, you know, hence maybe less consciousness in the relationship, less awareness of where fights or arguments or, you know, my own resistance was coming from. So then in recent years, through becoming more self-aware, through my spiritual awakening, and especially actually through my study of Zen and Eastern philosophy, I began to understand this concept of our existence being a relationship, and that like actually your entire existence in and of itself is a relationship, because you do not exist without everything around you. And the example that I was just listening to earlier today was from Alan Watts, and he was saying like it's like the stretched skin over a drum, and that the sound comes from the fact that there's the drum holding the stretched skin and then something hitting it, and without those things the sound doesn't exist, right? The sound being existence itself. And that's like the realization that actually every single thing is a relationship, because you can't have one without the other, right? It's like all mutually arising. So understanding that from a philosophical perspective, I've kind of distilled that into what that looks like in my relationship and my friendships. And me and you sort of just started talking about these, you know, either specific experiences we've had or like our theories on it. And we just sort of started to see like, damn, this idea of someone being a mirror for you, like it's not just a platitude. It's not just like a fun little saying. Like it really is so true on many, many levels. And when you start to understand that, it really changes the way you interact, because suddenly you're not like a victim in a relationship that's being triggered and this person's like bringing up all this shit for you. You're like, oh my God, this is showing me something. Like everything that I see in the outside world is a reflection of who I am inside. And just, yeah, that's like kind of the main high level idea that I've arrived at that fascinates me. And I'm excited to like really peel back the layers on what this means, you know, in our daily life, in philosophy, in practice, and all the things.
Yeah, I love what you said about it being like an empowering way to look at how we can, I forget the exact words that you used, but it takes us out of that victim mentality, because it's not like something is happening to us. We get to say, okay, how am I showing up that this person is treating me this way or acting this way? Like, what is the vibration I'm putting out for this to be an energetic match for where I'm at? And yeah, I think I pretty much see it. I saw it very in alignment with the way that you just said it. And I think being in a long-term partnership, you kind of have no choice but to learn about this work, or else you don't have the awareness around how you can really work through when you're seeing your deepest shadows being mirrored at you.
Yeah.
You have to become more conscious in order to really work through those with a partner that's willing to do that work, which we spoke about in that last episode that we recorded. But I think where I got super intrigued by this topic, I sent you a voice note as I was driving up to Arizona. I was listening to a podcast, and his name is Aaron Doughty or Doughty. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name. He was saying that what you see in another person is mirroring to you what you have within yourself and what you can understand consciously about yourself. because there's so much data to be received with that person that's in your field, but you can only receive what you know within your own being and what you believe within your own being and what you can perceive about yourself, which I had never heard it that way on like, I don't know. I feel like that's more like a scientific way to think about it.
Yeah.
Like more data driven and like energetics as opposed to just like, this person's mirroring to you your triggers.
Right.
He took it as like, no, we're actually only able to pick up on what we have within ourselves. And that kind of like is what made me voice note you and be like, this would be an incredible topic to dive into, because I feel like there's so many angles to this.
What did you interpret that as? Like, can you take that a little deeper, that concept?
Yeah, so I have found that throughout this journey of healing, there's been a lot of judgment that will come up. And that shows up in my life as maybe I'm like working through something myself. And I find that when I'm around someone else, it's like you're more conscious of, let's say, like you're working through a specific limiting belief. And then you're around someone who like really carries that limiting belief but they're totally unaware of it. And it's almost like that outward judgment of that person and only picking up on that one thing about them. But that's because I am so consciously aware of it in my own being.
Right.
So it's just simply reflecting back to me what I am computing about myself. And same goes for like the things that you love most about a person or that you admire most about a person tend to be the things that you either like desire to activate within yourself or that you feel that you also have.
Right.
And I think I thought about it in that sense, but then after doing all this research, like it goes so much deeper.
Yeah. This is actually reminding me of a moment I had that this was actually really one of the first times someone said to me about this mirror concept, and it really hit home for me. This was a couple years ago in LA. There's this amazing shuffler named Van Secco. I think I've sent you her account. She's huge. She's amazing. And she like really inspired my shuffle journey. And I went to her class in LA to take her shuffle class. And I also there was like getting to meet her for the first time. And I actually was really emotional meeting her. Like something kind of came over me, and I, you know, she's like a fellow Capricorn, and I just like went up and introduced myself, and I started telling her how much her dance videos like inspired me, and how like how much I just like see beauty in her, and that she's such a light and all these things. And I was like very emotional, like teary saying this. I like wasn't expecting it. And then she said to me, she like held my hands and looked at me and she was like, everything you're seeing in me is a reflection of what you have inside. And I was like, whoa. And it hit me so hard because one, this is someone that I like really looked up to. Like I really admired how incredible of a dancer she is, how stunning she is, how confident in her body she is, like all these things. And she was like, you are seeing that in me because that is alive in you. And it felt true because I had been on this journey of just spirituality and self-love and seeing the beauty in the world around me. And I feel like everyone can resonate with like there's like that person in your life who somehow can never seem to appreciate beauty. Like they're just either distracted or they don't see how you see like how gorgeous the sunset is or this flower or whatever. And you know, nothing wrong with them. They just don't see that maybe because their inner reflection is not of beauty or whatever it is. And that moment, I remember it so vividly of being like, wow, that is so true. The more that I see love and beauty in myself as a dancer and like the ability to inspire people, the more I will see that in others, which is the same reason why people can see successful people and dislike them and think that they're XYZ and be triggered because they are maybe judging themselves for the same aspirations or yada, yada, yada.
Right. Yeah. Before we dive into, okay, so the topic that you just touched on of like having these people that inspire you, let's save that so we can connect that to one of the mirrors in the list. Perfect. Of the but something that I wanted to talk about too is you just reminded me of when I'm feeling that judgment for another, I've been learning and really integrating this compassion and self-love for myself, because on this healing journey it can be very almost like distracting in a way of leaning into judgment while you're actually supposed to lean into more compassion when you're like releasing limiting beliefs. So whenever I feel triggered by another person, it's an opportunity to lean into deeper levels of compassion with myself. And that's something that I'm really working on. Because it's so true. Like, if you see love and wholeness within yourself, you're going to see that in other people as well.
Right.
And it's pretty crazy because when you really shift into that mindset of really seeing yourself in your fullest, you just see the greatness in other people too. Even people that like you disagree with, you start to see all of the love and light that they hold within, even if they can't see it themselves.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting is like, it gets intricate because a common question is, okay, what if there's a person that like you'd say, no, they're really just like such an asshole. Like they actually are just a total dick. And it's not that I'm a dick. Like they're just being terrible or whatever. And I think what's interesting in those situations is kind of like the ability that you, the aspect that you could observe how someone is, but then not take it on as affecting you. So, for example, like basically I'm kind of like out loud experimenting with this idea of, okay, if everything you see in other people is a reflection of yourself, you can still see behaviors and things that probably are not actually anything like you are, supposedly that you know of, and feel like a dislike for them, right? Like you witness someone doing something mean, or like a parent really like being harsh with their child or something, and you feel a sense of like judgment maybe. But I think maybe the key here is sometimes we can observe the action in another person and not go down to the vibration of judgment, and instead just see it basically plainly for what it is and not extrapolate this whole story about it. And I think maybe that's the deeper layer of that. It still holds true that you can see and observe behaviors in others that you do not aspire to, but depending on how you react to those behaviors and characteristics, that I think is the mirror aspect.
Yes, right. It's what you put into the equation that's going to show you what you get back. It's like, yes, a person can show up as their whole self, and maybe that person's doing something that you don't agree with, but it's the way that you're perceiving it that's causing you to be activated or not activated, right? Like that's how it's going to cause a shift. Do you get what I'm saying? I feel like we're saying the same thing in different words.
No, but it's helpful. It's helpful because it's like, I think this is just the common thing where it gets just tricky, I guess, is you wonder, okay, but if I see someone and I don't, resonate with how they're acting, does that mean that I have that inside of me? And that makes me think of two things. One, what we just said about it's not that you're never going to see like darkness, because obviously darkness exists and like it's a fact of our reality. But the other piece of it is maybe it's,
well, I think it's showing you where you still are judging darkness.
Yes.
And labeling, because what even is darkness and light when you really zoom out?
Yes. And that we actually all have a shadow. And so I think this is an interesting piece. This is something that Carl Jung talks about. And this is actually a quote I wrote at the top of our notes because I thought that this explained this whole fucking thing in a nutshell. He says, unless you learn to face your own shadows, you will continue to see them in others because the world outside you is only a reflection of the world inside you.
Yes.
And this is speaking, I think, exactly to what I'm saying, which is I think we feel feel such a strong repulsion and fear of shadow and darkness when we have not recognized it in ourselves. And this is like a very big philosophical area of study that Friedrich Nietzsche did, where he talked all about like facing the shadow and acknowledging the darkness within you. And this is again a Carl Jung thing. Alan Watts talks about this, is like integration of the shadow and recognizing that we all have dark parts of us, whether that's like, you doing shadow work and realizing you have judgment or fear, or you have shame from something you did in the past, or you had a dark thought about blah, 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 right? Every human has the light and shadow, and accepting the light and shadow is actually what makes us whole instead of only trying to experience the light. So I think what's interesting is when you observe someone who has some darkness or thing that you deem as a shadow, or, you know, like someone who's extremely manipulative. And we would generally agree that that feels a bit like it's darker on the scale and not something that like expands people, that you can observe that, but instead of feeling maybe like angry or fearful or judgmental about it, you're able to observe it for what it is. And I think that's that step of like, you know, you'll still see the darkness, the light, all the different shades of energy and light and behaviors, but you will relate to it differently, and it won't become like this part of you that then you're projecting onto others, which is what Carl Jung is saying, that if you do not face your own shadows and learn about the very intricate being that you are, you're going to see the world. You're going to like project all of those onto everybody else unconsciously.
Right. And I think I'm like having realizations as you're talking that when we are projecting those judgments outward about the shadow parts we see in other people, and that meaning that we're still not accepting of all the shadows of ourselves, we're getting caught in the Maya, caught in the illusion, right? And I think wherever we're asking, what is this showing? It's always kind of showing that you're getting deeper into like the matrix. You're getting deeper into the illusion of this all. Because on a macro level, when you keep zooming out and you're about the cosmos, like what really is good and bad if all of it has that divine order, which I love that was another part of the 7 mirrors.
Yes.
So
can you introduce oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, what you're talking about is number 2. So let's dive into these because I feel like we can get into some really deep conversations and have everyone filled in with what we learned. So I'm going to read this quote. The 7 Essene mirrors of relationships are spiritual concepts derived from the teachings of the Essenes, which were a Jewish sect that existed around 150 BC. These mirrors are psychological and spiritual reflections that help individuals understand and navigate their relationships and life experiences. So Belle and I watched a few videos on this on YouTube, and I also read some articles. And I thought this was so interesting because it takes what we think as very singular and divides it into different levels of what these reflections are telling us.
Yeah, I found this. So I watched only a little bit about this, and I already felt very not validated, but it put language to an experience that I've had before that I was confused about and just wasn't really sure what was happening. And I'd love, maybe you can go through and read them and we can kind of dissect a few of them. But I think this is like what you're saying. It's bringing a little bit of the science to what we say when we say relationships are mirrors. And it's basically giving us some examples of, okay, what are you seeing in the mirror, right? Like, why is this a thing? And how come this is almost like a spiritual capital T truth of our existence, is that the way they relate to others is going to bring up these truths in the form of the other person, which is the key part here, is that if you lived in a silo alone in a fucking cave, you would never get to experience these spiritual transformations and these lessons that are literally brought to you in the soul of another human being, which is actually what makes it so fucking magical and incredible, is that we have this opportunity to learn about ourselves and about our souls and consciousness through the souls of others that will bring us these lessons.
Right, exactly. And I almost view these mirrors as you're just going about living life, and it's these little flags that are thrown up of, okay, something's happening in my reality that is showing me something really important within. And that's where this term of mirror is coming in. So if you're confused with like, what are we even talking about with mirrors, see it as that it's like you navigating life and these little flags are going up that are giving you the opportunity to learn about yourself through an external experience, whether it be a relationship, a life experience, a challenge. And even in these 7 mirrors that we're going to list out now, one of them even is a relationship to your life experience, the dark night of the soul one.
Wow.
So it doesn't have to do strictly with people, but I think it's just relationships in general, which can be with yourself as well. So the first one, and they go in order of like the most prominent in your life. They like picture it almost as that pyramid with this as the foundation. So the first one is the mirror of the moment. Let me look at which is the mirror that reflects our present state of consciousness. and actions will return to us like a boomerang. So what we are is what we get in life. This is like almost the foundational basis of what we learn in manifestation, right? It's the state of being will be reflected in our environment. It emphasizes the law of cause and effect, or also karma, depending on where you're referring to. These lessons coming from.
Is this kind of like what we just said about how the general idea that what you generally have going on in yourself is what you will see in other people? Like who you are right now is what the universe is going to bring back to you.
Exactly. Yes. So like this is kind of the basis of understanding who you are is the tribe that you'll attract. Like if you really look around at your core community, you start to attract people that are on a very similar vibration to you. You can think of it almost on that energetic level that you will attract what you are.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, totally.
So when you are trying to figure out which mirror it is that you are seeing reflected with whatever experience or relationship, you want to go through these almost in like a step-by-step process. So see, okay, I have a person in front of me. Are they reflecting to me who I deeply am? And if the answer is no, then you can go to the next one and say, okay, which number 2 is the mirror of judgment. So whatever we judge, we attract. When people and or circumstances push our buttons, occasionally it may not be a reflection on our current state as described in the first mirror. If we determine the uncomfortable state we experience is not self-reflection, then judgment may be involved. The mirror of judgment states whatever we judge at that moment will activate this mirror. So again, think of the little flags going up. If you are with someone and you're saying, like even going back to the example where you said you're with someone who is, let's say, being manipulative and you're not agreeing with the way that they are acting. Maybe that's not a mirror into your state of being, but it's a mirror into what it is you are holding judgment on within yourself, allowing you to attract these experiences and these people into your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I'm processing. I'm the collective people listening right now, and I'm just like, copy that. Okay, wait. So that one is like, if it's not something that is alive in who you are right now, then it's, I guess, like a deeper thing that you're maybe rejecting or you're angry or fearful or judging, right?
Yeah, and you can think of it almost as like the heaviness of the charge too. Maybe you're just like hanging out with someone that's like an acquaintance that you know, and it's like you guys attract each other because of your states of being, and it's like you manifested each other into your life. But then sometimes we attract relationships that are actually reflections of a deeper charge, a charge that is rooted in judgment.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes, for sure. I'm picturing it like, yes, exactly what you're saying, where there's a deeper level. So, and this is where like the subconscious comes in, right? Because there could be deep within you something that's not currently living in your conscious mind where you are judging of XYZ. And so then when that human being brings it into your life, it illuminates it, and you are lifting another layer of, okay, there is something in me that is judgmental or fearful or blank toward this thing that exists in our universe, right? Versus the energy of neutrality or acceptance not meaning condoning, but just meaning like we see reality as it is, and it wouldn't necessarily affect you and be something that leaves a lasting imprint on you, right? Because this is the example I was giving of like you can see and observe manipulation or whatever it is and take it for what it is, but not internalize it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it can go even more broad too. Maybe it's not the judgment of something that is you could easily label as bad. It could go even as broad as the judgment that, let's say, for example, someone has, let's use like a body dysmorphia example. Someone is very judgmental of their body. That person, let's say they're in a room with someone, and maybe that person is going to reflect to them the judgment that they feel for themselves. So, for example, maybe that person has like a beautiful curvy body and they love it so much, But that person's going to sit across from them and think in their head, oh, wow, like that person's like overweight, and all the thoughts that they think about themselves. So it can even range into that direction too, of like the shadow judgment that we have of ourselves, that we can really start to learn where is it that we are lacking love and compassion for ourselves. This is why these mirrors are so fucking powerful, because they give you insight into where it is you're lacking either understanding of yourself or love for yourself, and then we'll get to the other levels too.
Yeah. Okay. I want to like double hammer this point in for a second, because it's making something click for me about this nuance in like how you can observe something and not integrate it or not internalize it. And this goes back to what you can tie to like this philosophy of when you become enlightened or something, like the Eastern philosophy of becoming an enlightened being is understanding the yin and yang, the light and darkness, and that these things exist in a balance, meaning you no longer would observe darkness and become upset or fearful or angry that it exists. You see it and you understand that it is there, but you do not feel threatened by it. You don't make it mean something about you. And I think that's the key, where I'm kind of connecting it to like how we all have a relationship to the news and media. And if you see news about, oh my God, the pandemic's coming back. Oh my God, the powers that be are going to fucking lock us down again. And you become thrown into fear or victimhood, or you're so upset and angry at the powers that be above you, whatever it is. That is different from coming to a place where you say, this is happening in our reality. There's these dark forces, but that doesn't mean that I need to be so affected by it that I lose my high vibration, or that I have to be afraid that my life is going to end because of this. And so it's exactly the space between you and the thing, and whether that space stays neutral and as it is, or if it changes because of what you have observed.
Right. And that's easier said than done.
Oh, for sure.
Especially when like you're so passionate about kind of exposing the darkness to people, so just so that they can be aware of it. And I agree exactly what you're saying, but that's the journey of it too. On a macro level, releasing the judgment of the darkness that exists, but then also on like our own personal microcosm level, I don't know if that's the right word to apply here, but of releasing the judgment towards our own shadows.
Yes.
And also another level of like releasing the judgment of being judgmental.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. The last thing I want to share on this, and then let's move on to the next one, is there was this guy Alex Zek. I've told you about him. If anyone like knows me from my previous podcast, I interviewed him before. He's amazing person. We want to interview him on the show, but long story short, he's a very prominent figure in the health freedom movement. He's just like a brilliant thinker, and I've seen him recently been talking about how important it is to recognize and work on how we are reacting to the news right now. And that the news and the government and whatever it is, as they try to, bring up the next crisis or exert power over you, he always says how it literally does not matter what they do. If you are in a state of freedom and understanding that you are free by virtue of existing, and that if you do not play in to this idea that they have power over you, this is just one example of like a certain scenario he would talk about, that then that attempt at power doesn't even affect you, and it just remains out there, essentially. Like, if I'm not explaining it exactly perfectly, but the point is, like,
you live in a different paradigm.
Yes, you are literally creating your own fucking reality by not buying in to that vibration. And so it's a very real world example of whatever news thing is happening, or if you're afraid that the government is going to take your rights away, whatever the frick it is, when you buy into and internalize that thing that is happening, it takes on a different life versus you remaining in your own power, in your own essence, in your own freedom, your liberation of who you are as a soul on this in this universe. It's a completely different experience.
Yeah. And there's such a fine line with that, because I truly believe that. And sometimes I get caught up in like I will get frustrated if I like see a certain headline or something, but it really is that knowing that you acknowledge it, you don't act naive towards what is going on, right? You go into the darkness to really figure out what's going on, and then you have to come back into the light, because also the change is not going to be made in the darkness. It's not going to be made with bringing like our fucking forks, our pitchforks and whatever, like into the darkness and fighting. It's going to be made by bringing ourselves back into the light and just living in that frequency and then creating the change from there.
Yes.
In any aspect of your life, whether it be in society or in your own life too, it's very hard to create change from the vibration of the judgment and the hatred and just like the resistance. So it goes back to like what we spoke about when I spoke about in the solo episode of just acceptance with what is, and then choosing to react and respond in the vibration that you wish to live in, which we all really need that reminder sometimes. I definitely need that reminder sometimes. And it's so true. Like, you get to choose what freaking paradigm you're living in.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Okay. So number 3, which we're going to get deep into because I feel like you and I both have a lot to say about this one.
Yeah.
The mirror of our lost love. So the red flag or the mirror that's going to be activated with this one is when you feel this electric, magical attraction to a certain person or certain people, and that attraction and that magical feeling is actually being activated. The mirror is being shown because that person is just embodying something that you have lost, abandoned, or gave away. So it says when an innocent soul activates an intoxicating attraction, consider their qualities you admire most. Then embody them yourself. So, okay, I'll let you take the mic on this one because I feel like you also have a lot to say on this.
Yeah, I'm just reading the last line here. This is how positive reflections can be a subtle reminder from a loving universe through the gentle reflections from the mirror of our lost love. Yeah, wow. Okay, so yeah, when I heard the guy who like put these together, his name is it's Greg hold on, I want to
something with a B.
Yeah, I want to get this right. Greg Braden. I don't know what to call it. He's, I guess, a steward of these principles.
A philosophy.
Yeah, so the philosophy. So when I heard him explaining it, it was this whole concept of when you could be walking down the grocery store aisle or in line somewhere and you see someone and you just automatically feel this like magnetism towards them. And I feel like this is so common. Like, this is so interesting. It can be either in like a attraction sense, but it can also be like platonic. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're like attracted to this person. It's more just attraction in the general sense of the word. Like, law of attraction is not inherently sexual. It's just like how we are drawn towards certain things. And it was so interesting to me because it's so true that I think so many of us, and I'm for sure happy to speak for myself, that we come across souls and people that were like, whoa, like, what do they got going on over there? Like, that's so interesting, or they're so confident, or they're so fun, or I love the way they do this. And like, they could be a perfect stranger, but you just feel kind of interested by them. And it's 100% something I've experienced. And I think what's interesting is that this is framed in something that you've lost, whether it's like a person or like something part of your life that maybe you either felt has been taken away from you or you let go or whatever. And what's interesting there is like, it's like it speaks to a part of something that you want to either be or do or have as a part of your being. And when you see someone else embody that, which is exactly what this is saying, it just sparks an attraction because your soul wants to embody that character. And what I really like that it's saying here is to consider the qualities that you admire in that person and embody them. And I think what's kind of cool to take away from this is like, I think sometimes we can feel a little bit confused or lost or like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, why am I interested in this? Why am I magnetized towards this person, their essence? What does this mean? Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this information? And I find it really eye-opening and liberating to then turn towards myself and say, oh, maybe it's just because I really admire their confidence, and so I would like to be more confident. Or maybe I admire how effortlessly, attractive they are in public, and that when they do their job, they come off very like beautiful or handsome because they're super confident. And that's something that I want for myself.
The Formula One drivers?
Called out.
She's like, I love Formula One. I'm like, why? She's like, have you seen them?
Dude, okay. Honestly, glad you brought this up. Fantastic fucking example. Okay. I'm not afraid to talk about this because it's so perfect in this mirror and it's making so much sense. It's so true. So yes, I'm a huge fan of Formula One. Honestly, I think anyone who spends time watching the sport, like, it does not take much to say these drivers are very attractive. But what's interesting here is we are magnetized. Actually, this is particular to your own, the characteristics that you admire. Because think about this. Someone else could view them and dislike the fact that they're like in their masculine and they're like go fast and do dangerous things and they're super confident. Someone could actually be repelled by that. So for me, yes, I'm someone who like I want to be, I don't know how to word this. Like, I love the idea of being a badass. I want to be super confident. I am super confident. I'm like someone who loves to visualize myself doing like incredible things in life, and people who are like on the edge. These people are also like very well known. They live like a cool public figure life. They are successful. Like, they just have all these things that obviously I am attracted to just for myself. So then when that's embodied in a human being, yes, it creates this like magnetism towards the person. And so it's so fascinating because now it's not just me being like, oh my God, like why am I like interested in this human's life who I don't even know them? Like, what is this about? Right? It's like showing me that I have something in me that is present in this person. And I think you can almost like solve the fixation by embodying it yourself and knowing that, oh, it's just that you desire to have this like this success or this swagger or this like sexiness, like whatever it is, you want that in yourself. And I just find that really liberating to like think through that. So that's my
I feel
take
like
on
it goes even deeper for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but with the Formula One drivers in this example, and even just thinking about the people that you really admire, like these YouTubers and all these people who like really have mastered their creative art, I feel like it goes deeper on a soul level. Like, maybe that's just like the ego's way of being like, oh, I want the fame and all that. Like, sure, that could be a nice thing. But I feel like you're connecting on a deeper soul level of people really mastering their craft.
Yes.
And like really honing in on their skills and using determination and drive to go all in on their dreams. I think that's something that like you probably see in those people that you're like,
yes,
fuck yeah.
Exactly. It's an energy. Yes, exactly. And that's the thing of like what is being carried through the soul of this person is the energy, right? Like, exactly that desire to be like a master, an expert in their craft, to be super confident. Like, that's the thing in my own relationship with Milan. Like, when he is crushing it at his job and when he's like in the zone and doing things, like, I'm so fucking attracted to him. It's like unbearable because I'm like, these are all the things that my soul is like, yes, this is in you. This is what you want. And like, you're going to want to become closer to a soul that shows those things to you.
You just reminded me of another thing that we learned. I feel like both of us wrote this down in the notes we took on the Gaia documentary we watched, and I'm going to bring this up here. We learned through our parents what we perceive as, what were the two words that they used?
Was this the
like good and bad?
The pleasure and pain? Like,
yes,
the neuro-linguistic program?
Yeah. And you grew up in a household, I'm like psychoanalyzing you as you're speaking.
Do it.
You grew up in a household where your dad was a very hard worker, right?
Yes.
He took the entrepreneurial route, right?
Mm-hmm.
He owned his own businesses.
Yeah.
And that was something that you developed as a lens of that is winning in that sense of life is pleasure, right?
Yes.
And that has given you such a beautiful drive for you to go after your dreams. And that is now what you also admire in other people. Like, that mirror of what you see as the pleasure is mirrored with your partnership as well, which is really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's such a good way to put it. It's like, yeah, exactly. You reflect back on your upbringing and the things that are present in your life and like what you were modeled essentially as a child, and that's what's going to probably be attracted, that what you will be attracted to.
Right.
I'm curious, like how did this mirror, like, how did this hit you?
This one hit me hard as well. And because I'm going to explain something. There's this one creator, and I feel like I've told you about her. Her name is Melissa Woods, and she is a Pilates instructor, but she's a lot more than that on social media. She really shares her whole life and her whole journey. And you can tell she's like on the path. She's doing the work. She has a bunch of coaches. She like reads Joe Dispenza's work. She talks about her spiritual journey a lot. And she has really tapped into her personal feminine magnetism that has allowed her to create a lot of success with her business. She charges $10 a month for a membership, and I think she has like an insane amount of members. I mean, I'm a member. I use her classes. I've been using her classes on and off regularly, as in like I'll go spurts of being super devoted and then kind of leaning into something else for the past, ever since COVID, so 3 years. And I have never once unsubscribed because it's $10 and I'm always going to tap in and out of it when I want to. And I think a lot of people have that mindset. And she's so magnetic that when you're doing the workouts, you're not only absorbing like obviously the fitness aspect of it, but you're absorbing her energy. And she talks so much about like mindset and like holding the discomfort. And she gives a little pep talk at the end and like really connects you to your highest self. And it's super potent and powerful. And I find that the energy shift of just being in her presence is very powerful. And a lot of people want to be in that energy. And she has always been someone, for me, watching her journey and hearing her story, we have very similar perspectives on like where she started and where she is in her life now and what she feels. Just like her mindset switches and the journey she's been on has always felt like she's been this big mirror for me. And even when I was first starting my health coaching journey, she also started out as a health coach and went to the exact same health coaching school as me. And I always just admired her willingness to lean into the path, even when you don't know where it's going to take you. And it took her to this beautiful part of her career where she's now teaching for hundreds of thousands of people. And every single time I listen to a podcast of hers or I watch a piece of content of hers, I get this emotional response. And I cannot figure out what it is. Like even on my way home from the dog park today, I was listening to her podcast and she'll say like one thing that really just strikes a chord in me. And I feel like emotion arising in me.
Wow.
And she has always been that person for me that has caused this feeling. And I never really was able to pinpoint it until I read this. And I was like, whoa, like she quite literally is just mirroring to me. Not Nala stretching in the corner, mirroring to me everything that I have within myself that in the past was like, I'm really working on unlocking that. I'm really working on sharing my voice. Like I really admired how she would just unapologetically show up and speak her truth and talk about her journey. And it was just so activating for me.
Wow.
And after reading this, I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And something I want to talk about here is something that we've also talked about is it's really important when you have these moments of realizing this like electric energy towards someone where you're like, whoa, I really admire what they're doing and what they're putting out, to not put them on a pedestal. And don't put a coach on a pedestal. Don't put any influencer or creator.
Don't put a Formula One driver on a pedestal, or I should say on a podium. P1. Yeah, you are P1.
Not Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen wins the... Yep. Anyway, sorry.
Haven't he been on number one? Haven't he been number one?
Yes, he's about to break a record, I think, of most podium wins in a fucking row.
Dude, he's making it not fun. Like, go home.
Same. I'm like, fucking let my Ferrari boys win. For fuck's sake. It's not fun anymore.
Yeah, he's McLaren?
No, Red Bull.
I want to see.
Red Bull.
Oh, he's right.
So good. Anyways, sorry. I couldn't help myself.
Peter will appreciate all these Formula One nuggets in here.
He's gonna be like, wow, this episode is actually all about Formula One and
we just title it Formula
the
One
spiritual lessons in Formula One and these insanely attractive drivers.
Oh my god. What was I saying?
Sorry, you were saying not to put like any coach or influencer.
Yeah, don't put people on pedestal.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is really important because when you are putting people on a pedestal, what you're subconsciously doing is putting yourself below. Don't even see it. Like every time you put someone on a pedestal, switch that and be like, whoa, I'm digging myself lower and putting them just on normal ground. Like I'm digging myself lower so you can visualize what you're doing. Because it's not lifting them up and saying, oh, I just admire them and I admire their values like you tweeted the other day. It's like saying when you're putting them on a pedestal, what they're doing is unreachable and I will never be able to do that. Yes. And you're putting yourself in the box of like, that will never be me.
Wow. Something else just really clicked for me because I also just realized I tweeted the thing you just called out, which I tweeted the other day, and it's such a match to what we're talking about right now, which is crazy. I tweeted, I think I said, don't idolize people, like idolize characteristics and values or
their
something.
Values and
yeah. And what just clicked for me is like a big part of this whole concept of relationships as mirrors is also that a lot of the time we seek what we want in other people and we want someone else to provide us what in the end we have within us.
Yes.
And this mirror of seeing, being magnetized to a certain person, a creator, or someone you meet on the fucking street is your soul. I think on the surface level, it's you thinking that the person has something that you need and therefore you feel magnetized to them. But when you go deeper, it shows you that you, of course, have the capacity to create this energy, this essence, this craft, whatever it is, this mastery of craft within yourself, which will then create a sense of completeness that then in your relationships, you are seeing things much clearer and you're not looking to outside forces to complete you. You're realizing that like, because you're interacting with souls that show you the characteristics, that doesn't mean that you need to latch on to the human being in order to feel those characteristics. It means that those things already exists in your world and you can embody them yourself, which is exactly what this is saying.
Yes. I actually had a mentor explain this process to me in the coaching space. People will be attracted to certain coaches based on this exact concept, but then it's the coach's role to be able to teach them and show them that they are their own guru. So there's actually a really important part of that process where the client or someone who is following a certain guru or like a philosopher or a teacher, where they take them off the pedestal. And it usually will happen when they see their humanness and they finally stop highlighting all those like really aspirational parts of them as just who they are. And you see the fullness of them, and that allows you to take them off the pedestal. And usually it will be like, whoa, like how could they do this? Because you had them painted as this perfect person, but then you realize, wait, they're just a human that's tapping into all these different parts of themselves.
Yes.
And I actually have the power to do that too.
Yes.
And there was actually a really weird part of like my journey of even following Melissa Woods where she like shared something and I was like, okay, I feel like I'm ready to unfollow her because I find that I'm almost like putting her on a pedestal and thinking that what she's doing is like unachievable. So I even like took a little bit of a beat and just unfollowed her for a little. And then when I finally started to realize that, okay, now I have to just like realize she's just a human and what I'm admiring most about her is what I see in myself. I was able to follow her again and just see her now. I just see her as like a human.
Yes.
All parts of her. Like I really took her off the pedestal. And the reason I keep talking about this one example is just that it's so like prominent in my life because of how high that emotion is of like this particular journey of this person just feels so similar. And I'm sure there's like all different levels of this that I could talk about, but I'm just using this as an example. So even just, I don't know, for yourself, are there people that you feel like you once put on a pedestal where you had a part of that path where you were like, wait a damn minute, they're just a person?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I can definitely have like I don't want to call it like an obsessive personality, but I just get very interested in people, concepts, and things. And I definitely have had phases where I think I'm spending too much time. It's actually becoming clear for me now with this concept where, let's say it's a content person, where if I'm consuming their content a lot, it's me accessing the desired characteristic, let's say, that I would like for myself through them. And because I'm, let's say, over consuming this person's essence, let's call it, then I'm not taking the time to cultivate it within me. And that's actually, this is not something that I fully put together until now with this mirror concept. But yeah, I can totally see how this like pedestalizing of people takes away from seeing your own power. And it's not even like that you need to see yourself as equal to them, raise yourself. It's more just like eliminating the steps that exist at all and viewing each person as just like these complete souls that are offering something to each other. So 100% I've like had that situation where I am maybe feeling like, okay, I'm like getting a little obsessed with this person and I need to like take a step back so I can really cultivate my own inner completion.
Yeah, like consuming too much content where you're like, this is getting weird. Like, I should not know this much information about this one person.
Yeah, says me who like watches F1 every weekend and is like rewatching the series with my sister right now.
The docuseries?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really good.
It's
I
really
watched
good.
all the seasons too with Peter. I had something that I wanted to say. Oh, wait, there was something that I heard once that connects beautifully to what we're talking about, that I don't even know if I mentioned this on the podcast before, but confidence is not putting yourself above people. It's actually seeing everyone as equals. And that really takes a lot of the pressure off to have to perform. And I feel like this connects to this because sometimes we can put ourselves on pedestals, and that's where anxiety kicks in of having to perform a certain way or having to walk into a room and having to like be perceived a certain way, or holding ourselves back from posting online because we care too much what people think. And it's really important to take the pedestal away from everyone and just to see us all as equals. And you'll notice just from that alone that a lot of the anxiety and pressure we put on ourselves start to dissolve. I remember when I was working with a client once she was sharing that she had a lot of social anxiety, and we spoke about this topic because she was subconsciously trying to perform and have people like her and have herself be perceived in a certain light, when if you really just take away that pressure and just show up as you and really see everyone as an equal, you can actually just begin to feel more at ease.
Yes, it's like confidence is walking into being at a party and actually not feeling the need to show off and inflate yourself because you walk in with a sense of wholeness and equality, versus when you come off with fake confidence and you're overcompensating is because you think people are peer and you need to climb your way up to them. And so your actions are from that, versus true confidence is like relaxed. Is like, I'm chilling. I don't need to prove myself. I know that like I'm whole. You guys are whole. Like we're good. And so it changes the energetic signature of your actions.
And it's more authentic.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that one could be its like own episode.
Yeah, that one was very interesting.
Let's see. Was there anything else that I want to talk about with number 3? And then you think the same. Let me see what I wrote down.
Oh, the piece of this that's also interesting is the part where it's like it frames it as the mirror of our lost love, which I think is interesting. And maybe like this could also play out where for people who are in committed relationships, like there's just, I guess, this like, I think it's like the idea that it's natural to wonder what different life paths you could have gone on, just as like a thought experiment of being like, I wonder where my life would be if I never met the love of my life that I'm with right now. And not as like you want something else, but more as it is just interesting to wonder all these different life paths that can play out. And when you meet people, knowing now that there are these mirrors, that they show you these parts of yourself that either you think that you've lost, because that's what it's calling it, is like think something you think that you don't have, which we know now that if you're seeing it in the other person, it means you have it inside you and you can create it. But that on the surface level, it can come across as you seeing someone that you think is like accessing something that you're missing or that you gave up early, like at some point. And I think that's also what is interesting and like magnetizing is the mystery of like what it's like to relate to another human being in just a pure sense, like not even in romantic or sexual or whatever. It's just like, what is it like to relate to this human being? What does the data of their soul have to show me? Like, that's just interesting to know.
Because every relationship does have something to show you.
Exactly.
Every single person that comes into your life, there is this like divine reason, especially the close-knit relationships and the like close friendships or intimate relationships. Like they all have a very particular path to them. And I even remember this so distinctly when we were in Puerto Rico and you picked me up in the car, or I can't remember, we were driving in a car somewhere and I was like, I want this to be a friendship where we can talk openly if we're triggering each other. Because I was like, eventually, like if we're going to be working together and doing all this stuff, like I remember saying like our egos are going to come out eventually.
Yeah.
And I would love for this to be the friendship where we could talk openly about those things.
Yeah.
And when you're in friendships or partnerships, to be open and willing to have the tough, hard conversations so that you can grow and heal together and support each other's journey with that.
Yeah, 100%. Should we run through the remaining mirrors?
Yeah, we're already an hour in. So let's just do these last 4. Okay, the next one we could talk about quickly. It's the mirror of compulsion and obsession. So these mirrors show up in your addictions and in your compulsions and your obsessions. And what these flags, these mirrors are showing you are where you are not fully feeling your emotions. And what that has manifested in your life as is a compulsion of certain behaviors or addictions. So you can use your compulsive behaviors as a mirror to show you where it is you're avoiding parts of feeling.
Yeah.
Or parts of yourself.
100%. This is something I experience when I start to miss Milan a lot, because we have been doing a bit of distance this year and I haven't seen him in like a month right now. And I notice in myself when I am essentially like numbing or, you know, scrolling too much or watching TV or whatever it is, fixating on something, that it is escaping from feeling the emotion of missing him, which is a very simple one. It's like, this is the root of so much like disease and addiction is you're literally running away from fully feeling and experiencing an emotion in your life by compulsion or obsession or addiction or whatever it is. It's like, it's crazy because we do it so often unconsciously. And then suddenly you're like, oh my God, I'm actually avoiding for me, I was like missing Milan really badly. And then I let myself like really miss him for 2 days. And I just felt so much better after, like actually letting myself be with the emotion and also recognizing like how beautiful it is to feel that emotion. Or in my case, it was like, how lucky am I to miss someone so badly? Like that's such a blessing.
Right. That's so beautiful. And the fact that you were aware of that too is really special, because we can have these emotions and just suppress them, and then they get trapped in the body, and then that will manifest as physical pain. So we can really start seeing these addictions and compulsions as these signals that show us, okay, something's off. It's almost like, I think the article even said this, and this is an example that I would always, an analogy I would always talk about too, is there's an engine light going on in your car. Start to see your addictions and compulsions as the engine light going on. Mm-hmm. And you can just really lean into curiosity around what this may be showing you.
Yeah. And I think this mirror specifically as I think a good example that I just thought of how you could be in a relationship that is actually a distraction from something within you, right? Because there's some people, there's the kind of path where you are not comfortable being alone, and so you're always with people, always in a relationship. Or for some people it manifests as sex addiction, or staying in like relationships that are not actually healthy, whatever it is, that itself you're going to see in the other person, and you're relating to the person, right? Whether you're like very reliant on them, you're codependent, all these things are the mirror to show you what is inside of you that wants to be looked at, felt, expressed, released, etc.
Right. And usually whatever it is that you're doing, those compulsions or whatever it is you're attracting, is not going to be authentic to your truest nature. It's going to be attracting based off of that like suppressed emotion and whatever vibration that is allowing you to be at,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next one is the mirror of sacred relationship. This mirror explores how our childhood experiences and relationships with our parents shaped our beliefs and expectations about the divine and ourselves. It encourages us to transform negative attitudes and templates. Let me pull up the article with this one. This one I didn't know if they were talking about what the Gaia documentary was talking about, how we learn through our parents and develop certain beliefs and expectations of people that will be mirrored in our reality, or if it was different. Okay, so here's more detail on it. This template informs our sacred relationship dynamics in the following ways. Number 1, positive and negative childhood experiences create primary love templates. So I think this is actually exactly what that Gaia documentary was talking about, of how we will actually seek partnership that mimics what we perceived in the divine union of our 3D mom and dad. I love how Greg in his video, I actually don't think he watched this video. I was exploring YouTube on this too, and he like refers to your parents in this 3D as like, the way that he referred to it, it's like these are just like your 3D parents.
That's actually, I actually love that, because it's kind of like speaking to, like, it's acknowledging like the levels of like the Holy Mother, Holy Father kind of idea of like the higher power being like the creator being your real creator, and your parents being like the ones that facilitated you coming into being.
Right.
That makes me picture like being, that makes me feel like a fucking simulation. That makes me feel like I'm like,
I remember
like I'm in a dollhouse.
He called them the surrogates. And I was like, oh my God.
That's hilarious. That's like makes me kind of uncomfortable, even though he's like kind of right.
Yeah. Okay, so let me finish reading this. This template informs our sacred relationship dynamics in the following ways. Okay, so positive and negative childhood experiences create primary love templates. So the positive and negative childhood experiences that you have will create the template of how your adult primary love relationship manifests. That's what that's saying. Parental modeled forms of success and suffering hardwired into your brain. So what your parents modeled to you as what was success versus what caused suffering will be created as a program in your brain and mirrored to you in your reality. We will treat ourselves in a similar fashion until we transform these patterns. So we are able to redefine our meaning of success, redefine the positive and negative childhood experiences we had. We are able to heal those and transform and create different realities for ourselves. And then it says, in relationship dynamics, we treat others as we internally treat ourselves. So I think that's just like a little side note there.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't even know what to say. You go.
Yeah, this is, I feel like, the most classic of the experience of relationships as mirrors is when people say that, we know that from in like the first 2 years you develop your attachment style, like you are going to develop much of what you attract later in your life. And this is for all of us, like the relationships that we get into, and that while it's unconscious is when the patterns can come up that you probably experienced in your parents, until you become aware of them and then recognize like how you want to shift them. And this is actually like a conversation I've had with my partner of like things that I was like essentially expressing fears that I had that I realized I was like making come true in our relationship based on either childhood memories or just whatever random conditioning I have of relationships and what like a man and woman's relationship is like. I remember expressing like I have this fear that this is going to happen, and by saying it out loud, it's like helping me, you know, it's helping you know that I'm probably going to mirror this to you while I work through it. And it was really powerful for me to also take my own power back and realize that I can create the reality of this relationship, and it doesn't have to just be the unconscious mirroring of whatever is within me.
Right. And I think that's where like the deepest connection starts to evolve, is when you really start to transcend whatever programs or templates, as we're saying here, and you get to create your own, because then again, it's coming from that like authentic, true you and the deepest form of love from your soul.
Yes.
Where the two people can actually flourish on a deeper level. It's not just a program manifesting into a union. It's actually two souls coming together.
Yes. This is a perfect like way to tie in this quote that I was reading from Thich Nhat Hanh, who's an incredible Zen monk and writer and preacher, or priest, I mean. And he talks about how, I love this thing he says where understanding is love's other name. And meaning that the more in a relationship that you come from a place of seeking to truly understand this person, to be compassionate and to see everything that they bring up, right? Everything that you mirror back to this person is something for you to understand and to learn about. And I thought it was so beautiful and such a nice way to encapsulate the dynamics of a relationship. And he also calls love as interbeing, like, which is exactly what we're saying, where the souls are coming together. And this is like where you have like twin flame energy or entanglement of souls. You're going to learn about this person through what you trigger in them and vice versa. And the way to move through that and become even more connected and deeper and intimate and attracted to each other and in love is by actually going deeper. Whereas most people would be afraid of the trigger and they would use that to run away or hide or put a fake facade of themselves up. On the flip side, you use those as the opportunities to go deeper, and that creates the most beautiful, loving, divine, sacred relationship that there is through that understanding, through compassion, and through opening yourself up. And this was this amazing quote. I think I sent you this. It's so powerful. I'll read this and then we can do the other two mirrors, or obviously you add what you want. So this is Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, if you pour a handful of salt into a cup of water, the water becomes undrinkable. But if you pour the salt into a river, people can continue to draw the water to cook, wash, and drink. The river is immense, and it has the capacity to receive, embrace, and transform. When our hearts are small, our understanding and compassion are limited, and we suffer. We can't accept or tolerate others and their shortcomings, and we demand that they change. But when our hearts expand, these same things don't make us suffer anymore. We have a lot of understanding and compassion and can embrace others. We can accept others as they are, and then they have a chance to transform.
Yes. Dude,
Powerful.
That is so powerful, because I've learned this in the program that I'm in now. We enslave people into certain boxes based on our judgments of them and what we perceive they need to change. And when we're thinking like, oh, this person just needs to do this, if only they would do this, we're actually enslaving them into this paradigm of them being stuck and helpless. And it's only when you take away that narrative of they even have to change and just accept them and love them and have compassion and understanding for whatever stage of life they're in and for who they are, that is when they actually have the capacity to change. And I was learning about this on an even deeper level with Neville Goddard. Am I saying his last name right? His quote of everyone is just you pushed outward. Is that the right quote? Everyone is you pushed out. Yeah, everyone is you pushed out. And when you are perceiving someone in a certain light, and this can be really powerful if you are wanting someone to like change, which can be a whole other conversation, but to accept someone for where they are is when you're actually going to give them the freedom to show up as that version of them. And this quote of everyone is you pushed out will even go into a theory that what you believe about someone is what you will see and what they will express in your reality. So if you see someone as broken, weak, needing to change, then you're going to continue to have that person show up in that essence in your reality. But if you really let go of that need to have them change and really love them for who they are, you start to see that things start to shift and that energy of love and the higher vibrations begin to take over and allow for them to transform. Isn't that wild?
It's amazing. And this, if you take, for people listening, if you take everything that we just explained about the mirrors and the judgment and your relationship to what you see in others, that is all exactly what we're talking about here. When you then flip the switch to choose to accept, understand, and seek to go deeper and not be triggered or upset by what you see in others, and understand that again, you're going to see a lot of it through what's in your internal world, which is why Thich Nhat Hanh goes on to say, like, your job is to create happiness, to become more loving, to seek more compassion, to make it your system default, to look to go deeper and love someone even more. And that's how you kind of get rid of this tension between you and the object that is mirroring yourself back to you.
Right. There's this Robert Grant quote that you just reminded me of that I tweeted once that was, you will attract what you judge until you don't judge what you attract.
Ooh.
And it connects.
That slaps.
It connects to what we're saying, because if you find yourself constantly surrounded by people that you're like, they need to change, they need to do this, maybe it's time to look inside and release the need for them to change. And not only will they change, but also the people you surround yourself with will be a reflection of what you truly believe and feel within yourself.
Absolutely. Mic drop.
Okay. Oh, also, I did want to add something.
Oh.
There's something really interesting from the Gaia documentary that connects to the sacred relationships and parents, which is, okay, what we felt we didn't receive from our parents will be the foundation of our suffering as adults if we do not use higher states of consciousness to illuminate these shadows. They will show up in adulthood as us assigning the same roles to our partners and then fighting with them to somehow try to get what we never got from our parents. So I found this so interesting that we will actually recreate the relationship we had with a certain parent and assign a role to a partner in a sacred relationship, and we'll subconsciously try to get and fight our way to whatever it is we were lacking through the partnership, if we're not conscious and aware of everything that's going on. Isn't that crazy? I heard that and I was like, whoa, that makes so much sense. It's like our mind literally believes that this is how people are. So then we attract the people that show up in that exact same way, giving us the opportunity to seek the exact same thing that we were lacking.
Right. And it's because the soul from birth, from the moment you leave the oneness of your mother's womb, you seek to return to it. And so through your relationships, you are seeking to become more whole, which in part, of course, our relationships enrich our lives and do help make us feel whole. But of course, the root of wholeness is already innate within you because you're already one with the entire universe, with everything, with your partner. That by seeking it so externally, that's where we have the problems and the mirrors and all this shit that comes up, is because we're creating these situations hoping that the box we shove them into, that they're going to fulfill that role. And it's so unfair. And that's how we are, we set up for disappointment, and we like create these situations that cause more harm because we're trying to replicate something that we feel that we didn't get in our childhood or that's missing in our subconscious sense of ourself.
Yeah. Mic drop. Spot on.
I literally in my mind was like gonna drop this mic, and then I realized it's really fucking heavy, and that would have been atrocious. But I started to hold it.
That expensive.
Oh, here we go. I'm and expensive. Balancing it on my tummy.
You were holding your mic.
I switched to holding it because I've been having to lean forward on the desk and it was annoying me. But now it's balancing on my tummy, so this is actually perfect. Watch this. Flexing my abs.
It's like
When I laugh, it just goes. Dun, 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 dun.
okay, and one more thing that I wanted to add that connects to the templates we learned from our parents. We will learn, like what we said before about the suffering and the pleasure. They used two different words, or no, it wasn't suffering, and it was suffering
Pleasure
and success with
pain,
the other.
I think.
Yeah, the documentary used it as you will learn the templates of pleasure and pain. And I found this part so interesting because over the past 3 weeks, I've been eating a completely different diet, like so much healthier than what I've been eating in the past 2 years of my life. And it feels so fucking incredible. And it's been so easy for me to transition into this way of eating and nourishing myself. And the other day I was on a walk and I'm like, I don't understand. Why has this been so easy? I feel like in the past with fueling my body with nourishing food, it's always been this battle. Like it's always felt like something like, oh, gotta eat healthier. Like
Same.
I need to do this. And these past 3 weeks have been so fucking eye-opening for me. And when I saw that part in the documentary about, they said that it is extremely powerful to become conscious of what we associate pain and pleasure with.
Yes.
Because it will be easy to do the things you associate pleasure with and difficult to associate the things you do pain with. And this also was a light bulb moment for me listening to the podcast that we released today on the devotion and the discipline, because you shared that you had associated pain with waking up in the morning. Like you associated that with a negative connotation. And I realized that I started to associate eating healthy in the past 3 weeks. I mean, I've always knew and like felt that nourishing my body was good. And obviously you hear it all the fucking time being in this space. And I was a health coach. Like I knew that this was, I knew it was inherently good to eat healthy foods. But my mindset and my programming around food, I feel like not from, I don't think this was from my parents, but just from like the society we live in of like Instagram and foodies and like trying out restaurants. You start to associate every single meal with just pleasure. And when you're seeking pleasure through meals, when you're in moments of not feeling happiness or feeling a lower vibration, you may actually lean into something that you think is going to give you pleasure as a coping mechanism. And that's when people will start to really eat in ways that feel uncontrollable because they're associating food with so much pleasure, which food can be very pleasurable because of the nature of the way that we make food these days. And I realized that it's been so easy for me to eat healthy because my association with what I'm viewing as pleasure and pain has switched. Wow. I've actually been seeing whole foods as this is my pleasure. And it's gotten to a point where my taste buds have kind of shifted as well, where I'm finding so much pleasure in like eating an apple and like a banana. And we spoke about this in the episode too, where you start to actually change like the makeup of your taste buds with what you're eating.
Yes.
But yeah, that was a huge light bulb moment for me because they also spoke about how addicts associate pleasure with their addiction and they associate pain with being away from their addiction.
Right.
And it just was like, whoa, if we just change the things that we associate pain and pleasure with, that would be so transformative for us to just put pain and pleasure in the particular ways that we desire to achieve things in our life.
Yes, huge. And this is a very quick side note, and then I want to do the last mirror, is also how they talk about this in the Guy documentary, and guys, we'll link all these references, that through NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, that's also how the news and media manipulates people by associating certain things with fear or hatred or basically the emotions that trickle off of pleasure and pain. And that's how either a human or something like the news and media would manipulate you into buying decisions, voting decisions, how you view other people, tribalism, by playing on those pleasure and pain associations to rewrite what you view a certain person as or whatever. That's what they did during COVID, is they made you fear other people. They made you fear people who didn't fall in line with the mainstream narrative. And through that programming, they literally rewire your brain to associate things in a very fucked up way.
But what if there's someone even above this making us associate that with...
No, Nikki, that's where I draw the line. The news and media are fucking evil, and I'm done with this discussion. And the fact that you would question this is extremely disturbing to me.
Unfollowing. Bye.
I'm unfollowing you because I can't handle your opinion, bitch.
Okay, the last one. Wait, no, we didn't even dive into the sixth one. Okay, we'll do these fast.
Yeah. Rapid
The
fire.
mirror of the dark night of the soul. The mirror of the dark night of the soul is when you have the flag go up in your life when you are experiencing fucking darkness in its totality. So the mirror challenges us to accept that everything in life, both positive... Oh, no, I'm skipping. Sorry, 1 second. The dark night of the soul is a period of deep, existential questioning and suffering. It pushes us to re-examine our beliefs and let go of illusions that no longer serve us.
Boom,
So I
awakening.
honestly, like, yeah, this is like, we all know this, right? You're going through a tough time in life. It's literally there to bring you towards a light and reveal where it is you are perceiving reality through a distorted perception, where you're perceiving yourself through a distorted perception. We can do an episode on that one day. So the last one is the mirror of... Wait, did you have anything that you wanted to say about this?
No, you covered it. Rapid fire.
Well, these last two I feel like we speak about a bunch. So the last one is the mirror of divine order. This mirror challenges us to accept that everything in life, both positive and negative, is perfect. It urges us to let go of external judgments and develop compassion without attachment to outcomes.
Wow.
So this flag or mirror will show up in your life when you are labeling something as inherently bad or good. And that can actually lead to certain levels of suffering. And to know that there is actually a divine order in everything. So like the biggest example I can think of is COVID. If we were to have labeled that experience as bad, we would take away this really divine experience of so many fucking people awakening during that period. So maybe that actually was not inherently bad. Maybe in our little human meat suits down here on Earth in 3D, we labeled that as bad, but there actually is no bad or good up there. So to see everything from that lens is to release judgment from what we perceive as bad or good.
Yeah, I like to think and talk about this idea from the super macro lens in the big picture, and that exactly what you're saying is when you zoom out, and this is important to remember that this is in the context of when you're talking about how you want to set up your relationship and your philosophy to life and of about life, is yes, on a very micro day-to-day level, you can recognize the sadness, the grief, the loss that can come from certain things that happen in life, like death, murder, sickness, manipulation, abuse, these things that are clearly things that cause us harm or us suffering, right? Those are very real human experiences. And it's not to take away from those at all. It's actually to give your soul this understanding that when you zoom out, like we're saying, and you see life as it really is, that in fact there is a divine order, there is a duality, a light and dark, and that they all exist to propel the existence of the universe forward. And this is such a core principle of Zen and Eastern philosophy and Buddhism. By the way, guys, if you haven't caught onto this yet, I'm like very intense into Zen and Eastern philosophy. I've like studied it for years, which is why I bring it up all the time. And this is a core teaching, is that when you enlighten and you awaken, you are seeing reality as it is without judgment. And that is going to include the light and the dark, the terrible things that happen. And, you know, people will interview the Dalai Lama and ask him, you know, like, what do we do about all the bad things happening? And his answer tends to be along these lines of recognizing that we are pushing on to these things, these intense perceptions of how we view the world, and that causes us suffering, which is okay. That's part of the human experience, is to feel these things and to experience the loss, the grief, like that is the human experience. But to then also have the spiritual capacity to lift higher and see the grand scheme of everything. And I think that's what's really important to highlight is it's not to say that we're condoning things that are obviously hurtful and harmful, and we can talk about, you know, these very micro concepts of what about this society thing, and what about this injustice. We can talk about those things and understand their unique, you know, the unique nuances of them, and we can also go to bed at the end of the day understanding the divine order of things, which is going to actually make us healed and better people to be able to handle anything that life throws at you.
Exactly. And I think a good example of what you're kind of getting at is A Man's Search for Meaning is written by a Nazi camp survivor, concentration camp survivor.
Yeah, Viktor Frankl.
And the entire book is about him finding purpose through that experience.
Yes.
And if he can find purpose through that experience and divine meaning in that, I mean...
Yeah, dude. That shit gives me chills. Like, if anyone has not heard of Viktor Frankl, I highly recommend looking him up and digging into some of his work. Just such an incredible man. And he went on to, he basically became like a very big figure in psychology and psychotherapy. I think technically logotherapy it's called. And he has all these interviews talking about, like, you know, how we understand world and suffering and darkness and all these things. And with his life experience, it just really hits home that you're like, wow, like there is really some truth to this idea. And it doesn't mean that we're numb to the world and that we're, you know, condoning violence and whatever. Like, that's not at all what it means.
Right. It's real, but is it really what our mind is perceiving it to be? You know, like the experience and the feelings are so real, but to zoom out and see kind of, it's almost like, I've heard the quote of like seeing a tapestry up close and then you zoom out and it's like this whole beautiful piece of art, but up close it just looks like nothing.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get lost in like the darker threads thinking like, wait, there's not even like a pattern here or anything. Like this is just gross and ugly. But then you zoom out and you're like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah. I'm British suddenly.
Okay, guys, I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then just this little conclusion. In essence, these mirrors offer insights into the nature of relationships, personal growth, and spirituality, encouraging individuals to become more self-aware and aligned with their true selves. Okay.
Amazing.
That was it.
Wow. Yeah. That was really fucking cool. And I feel like understanding those mirrors in depth kind of, that like perfectly helped us go from the very high level concept of relationships as mirrors and they show you things about yourself, and we like really took it down to the level of being like, yes, relationships the way you think it's just like you and your partner, and we realized that everything is a relationship. This whole universe and the fact that it exists is a relationship, and therefore you can now view your life as these different mechanisms for you to learn about yourself. And in the end, the universe is here to experience itself through all these different things, through me and you, through the computer, through the blade of grass outside, and me and these fucking blades of grass, dude. Someone needs to turn me into a fucking meme with the amount of times that I mention a blade of grass. Okay, listen, you wouldn't understand. I'm so awakened that I see the beauty in a blade of grass. So fucking come at me, okay?
No ego at all.
I know, I'm fucking kidding. Anyways, my point is, what the fuck was I saying? Yes, that
everything's a relationship.
Everything's a fucking relationship. And I thought that was really cool because this conversation started and I thought we were going to go in one direction and went in another one. And that always happens with us. And I love it because I think it really went to a deeper level that most of the time we don't go to when people tell us that relationships are mirrors, and we get very stuck in the 3D of what that means. And this was just really cool, I think, to unravel the true meaning of relationships and your life as a mirror. And it was really enlightening. I can't wait to like go back and listen to it and take notes.
I know, same. And just remember, everything is cause and effect, and you are the cause. So that should be super freaking empowering to know that anything that you want to shift externally, even if it's the way someone is behaving in your life, you get to turn inwards and shift something within yourself. And I guarantee you will see a reflection of that outward. Cause and effect. Everything is cause and effect.
I love it.
All right, guys, that is it for today's episode. We hope that you take a lot away from this. And we will see you next time on the Out of Our Minds podcast. We love you.
Bye.